What's happening, story makers? Sean Avery here with the next lesson in the Children's Book Council Make Your Own Storybook competition. The last time we were together, we discussed illustration styles and mediums, so you've probably picked your medium and you're working on your final illustrations now. This lesson is going to be all about book design and the mechanics of actually making pages sort of bind together and fit together nicely. Now, a rule of thumb with books is that they generally they generally have the amount of pages is generally a multiple of 4. So most picture books have 32 pages, so 32 divides into 4. The minimum size you probably want is about 16 pages so that you can actually have like a proper book. Anything less than 16 and it's just probably a bit too small. Around 32 is like the mark that you want to hit. You could potentially have more than that if you need to, but you have to go up in multiples of 4. So like if you need more than 32 pages, the minimum you'd need to go to then is 36 pages. You have to think about the design for 36, or if you want to go higher, then you've got to have 40 pages, then 44, then 48. If I were you, I probably wouldn't go over 48 pages. That's quite a lot to get through. It's probably a bit of overkill for this particular project. But I'm gonna go to my desk now and I'm gonna show you the reason why books are bound together in page numbers in multiples of 4.
There are many different ways to bind books, but in these lessons we're only going to talk about the 2 most common ways. So the 2 sorts of books that you guys will probably be the most familiar with are perfect bound books with soft covers and hardcover books. So let's take a look at both of them. The first one, a soft cover book. It's called a soft cover not because the cover's really soft. It's still made out of a fairly solid cardboard stock, but it's not as rigid as a book like this one is over here, where it's got a really sturdy binding. So this one has, if you can imagine it stretching out, it has a large one piece of cardboard that goes across, and then it's folded with a small section over here which is called the spine, and that piece of cardboard protects the pages that are inside. Now if you take a look, it's probably quite tricky to see, but you can see that these pages are actually glued into the spine over here. Now with a hardcover book, the pages are also glued into the spine area over here, and we'll talk about how to create this hardcover in the next lesson, but for now we're just going to talk about the actual pages themselves and how they're glued in. So the pages are separated into multiples of 4 and are glued in sections. So I'll show you what I mean. So if you can imagine, so here we go, we've got a piece of paper, we fold it in half. Now this piece of paper, once it's folded in half, has 4 pages of a book. So you imagine this is page 1, flip it open, here's page 2, here's page 3, here's page 4. Now, how do we add extra pages to that? Well, we need to create what we call a section. So we take another piece of paper and we fold another piece of paper in half, and again we'll have an extra 4 pages that we're going to add to our book. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we've got 4 pages here, we've got 4 pages here, we slot them into each other, and there you go, you've got 8 pages. So this is what we call an 8-page section. Let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So now we want to add another page to our book. What are we going to do? Well, you guessed it, we're going to take another piece of paper, we're going to fold it, and it's going to make 4 pages again. So you can see why books usually the pages come in multiples of 4, because every time we want to add 1 page, we have to add 4 pages. So we take another 4 pages and we slot it in like that. So now we've got a 12-page section. Let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So you can keep on going with that. If you've got a 16-page book, you could easily add another piece of paper to that to add another 4 pages to get 16. But the problem, let's do that. But the problem comes when you've got a larger book. Say you've got a 32-page book and you want to have double that. It's gonna start to get a little bit tricky, because the pages are going to get thicker and thicker and thicker, and it's going to be harder to bind. Let's talk about binding this section as it is. So you can see, guys, that obviously these pages are together, but they're kind of loose. They're not sort of connected to each other. So how do we bind up this section? Well, what we do, well, you can do it one of 2 ways. The first, probably the easiest way, is to take something like a long arm stapler and to just put a staple, one on either side, right in the middle there, to bind that section up. So I'm gonna line up my stapler and do that. The most really nice books generally don't have staples in them though. They are usually hand sewn, so you can get a needle and thread and sew these pages together if you want to. I think I might do that with my example for the book that I'm making, Charles with Oinkington. So I put a staple in there, and I put a staple in here. Now, long arm staplers, guys, you can get them from places like Officeworks. I think they cost about $15. You could just use a regular stapler too if your book pages are a little bit smaller. Anyway, so there we go. We've got 1 section, guys. 1 section. And basically what you wanted to do, if you wanted to, so this is a book that's got 16 pages at the moment. If you wanted a book that had 32 pages, you would do another section just like this. You would put it on top, and basically, so say here's your cover, you would actually glue these sections into your cover, just like that. So one 16-page section glued in. Another 16-page section glued in. That's 32 pages right there. And that's pretty much how we have our sections. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you how I would sew sections for my book, Happy as a Hog Out of Mud. To make this 16-page section here, I used A4 paper, white paper, and I stapled it together. But for my book about Charles with Oinkington, I want to get a little bit fancy. I'm going to use black paper as my pages, and then I'm actually going to glue my illustrations on them. So this is A3 paper. It's double the size of A4 paper. This is kind of like the maximum size you want for your pages. So I want to get enough paper here to make a 16-page section, because I've only actually finished 16 illustrations from my book. I've only finished 16 pages. So I shouldn't really count 1, because remember, each piece of paper counts as 4 pieces of paper. So let me go up in 4s. 4, 8, 12, 16. Okay, and I can put the rest to the side that I can use later. So I've got 16 pages here. This is a 16-page section. I'm going to fold it over like so. And this is slightly thicker slightly thicker paper stock here, so it's gonna be a lot heavier. But I kind of like it. It's a little bit more sturdy, which I appreciate. Make my book a little bit more durable. Now, to sew my section together, I'm going to use a needle and thread. Just because I find the staples a little tacky. I don't really like them that much, but absolutely nothing wrong with using staples if you want to use them. I just think needle and thread looks a little bit neater. Now, if you don't know how to sew, you're not confident with your needle and thread, I suggest probably getting your parents to help you out with this, or maybe even a teacher. If you go to school, I'm sure your teacher wouldn't mind helping you do a little bit of sewing. So I'm going to start at the top here, poke through, and I'm going to sew the top section here. So I'm going to go through once. And you know what? I'm not so great with my sewing either. I wish my mum was here so she could do it for me, because it's really not something that I'm super confident with. So I'm going to pull it all the way through and then go down. I always end up poking myself. Okay, I've sewn through and I've gone around and looped it over quite a few times. I'm going to snip off any excess that I have. Like that. And you can see that part of the book is pretty well sewn together. If I wanted to make it more invisible, I could have used black thread over there. I just chose to use white so that you can see it a little bit easier. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do the exact same thing in the middle over here, and the exact same thing at the end over there, and that'll make this section of the book really strong. So you can see here, guys, I've got my 3 spots where I've sewn my book section of 16 pages. So as you can see, 1, 2, 3. You might notice that this one over here, it looks kind of ugly. It's not very neatly sewn, and same with these ones. It's got little loose bits hanging off. Don't stress about that too much, because this is the side that's going to be glued into the spine. So if you can imagine, you've got your hard cover. We're going to talk about making that one next time. You're going to glue it into the spine there. You won't even see any imperfections over there. It's important though that you don't see imperfections down this side though. And again, guys, if you find the sewing too tricky, yeah, just use a stapler for this one. That'll work just as well. So there you have it, 2 different bindings. Now I'm going to show you how I'm going to add my illustrations to this. So over here I've got my first 16 illustrations for my book. So this is going to be my title page. As you can see, I haven't done my title page yet. The title page will be the same as the front cover, but I like to do my front cover right at the end, because generally, out of all the pictures that I've drawn, I'll usually pick my favorite picture for the front cover. And I haven't done all the pictures yet, so I don't know which my favorite one's going to be. So my front cover will be glued over here like this. I'm just going to put this here as a place saver. Now you'll also notice, guys, that my book is going to be a square book, or kind of like almost a square book. So it's going to be a bit shorter than what I've actually made it over here. So towards the end, I'm actually going to trim this top piece off. So I'll actually lose that sewn bit over there, but that's fine. It's no problem at all. That's usually what happens. So there we go. There's my title page. Now for page number 2. I'm going to flip over, and this is my page number 2 over here. So I'm going to glue page 2 down in this corner like that. So this is the one where all the warthogs are jumping all over each other. So you can see I haven't actually added the text yet, guys. I'm still deciding, am I gonna print out some text and then cut the text out and stick it down, or am I gonna write the texts by hand and stick it down? Am I gonna write the text over the top of the illustrations? I haven't really decided yet. So I'm just going ahead and gluing my final drawings down. So there we go. There's page number 2, page number 3. This is the one that's the warthogs play in the mud all day long, and you can see the sun sort of coming up over the horizon and at midday, and then setting there, and you can see, if you look really closely, the little warthogs are playing in the mud over there. So that shows that there's a little bit of show don't tell for you guys, showing that the warthogs are you know, staying in the same spot all day. So here we go. I'm going to stick page number 3 down. I'm going to line it up really well. Boom. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. All right, I'm going to go ahead and glue the rest of the pages down. Then I'm going to trim the top bit off, and if the edges are kind of a bit rough, so I don't know, it's a bit hard to see on the video, but the edges are kind of sticking out a little bit. I'm also going to trim down this side over here, and it just depends how you trim that, guys. Actually, you know what I might do is I might actually show you how I'm going to trim it in all the various ways that you can trim chunks off your book. So here you have it, guys. The first 16 pages of Happy as a Hog Out of Mud, all sorted. Now, I probably should have mentioned this earlier. Why would we bother going through all of this effort to bind our pages, to sew our pages together like this? Well, it just adds a bit of durability to your book. So if you can imagine your favorite books, people turn the pages over and over and over, and the more the pages are turned, the more damage is done to the actual book and the binding itself. So if you do a really strong binding like this, where you have sections that you sew together and then glue into a nice hardcover book, it'll protect it for years to come, and you'll be able to enjoy it for much longer. And even though the competition is all about your story and your drawings, it really doesn't hurt to have a nice presentation, a really great looking book that feels solid and that has tons of time and effort been put into it. It'll definitely help your case as a submission. So there you go. Now, I need to trim this. I need to trim a little bit off the top over here, and there's a number of ways we can do this. You can use a pair of scissors to cut along the top there. I would strongly recommend you don't use scissors though, because you won't get a nice straight cut. I would probably recommend using something like a metal ruler and a Stanley knife and dragging it along to make a really clean cut. Now, guys, I definitely recommend you get a grown-up to help you with this one, because it can be a bit dangerous. These knives are very sharp and can be really easy to cut yourself. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna line it up. So it's a bit tricky, but I basically want the same amount of black edge there as on this side as there is on this side. So I'm gonna line it up, and I'm gonna trim it there. Also, guys, if you have access to a nice trimming machine, like maybe if you get your teacher to do this, they'll have one at their school that they use to trim their worksheets. That would be ideal as well. I've got a trimmer here at home, but it's not so great. All right, I'm going to be really careful. Dragging it along. Okay, I need to go one more time. And again. There we go. So I've removed this top piece over here. That's kind of cool. It's almost like its own little book on its own. So that's definitely not wasted. I could use that for something else later. And you can see that some of the pages still need a little bit of extra trimming on the edges. I can do that, but basically my section is at its correct size now. What I need to do is, from this point, is make my next section, which has got my next 16 pages for the second half of the story. And then I need to take these two sections and glue them into a hardcover, which I will show you how to create in the next lesson. And of course, with my illustrations, I need to put the words in. So, like I said, I might stick the words down or I might write them in by hand. I haven't decided yet. I'll wait right till the very end before I put my words in.
Okay guys, now that you know how book pages and sections work in your book, you can make an informed decision as to how many pages your book should have. And remember guys, if you need to use up a few extra pages, why not have some really nice double page spreads with no text on them at all? That kind of breaks it up really nicely. Or you can have, or if you only need one extra page, maybe you can get a bit creative and put one of your pages onto an end paper, something like that. It's totally up to you. The next time when we are together, we'll talk about how we will take those sections, those pages, and bind them into a hard cover. Happy creating, guys. I will see you all next time.